Wow. I really hope that the next one, the next one is going to go more smoothly because I keep having issues with my life, but we are here. I'm in New York at this moment, so uh, you can see a little bit of my hotel room. But most than that, I'm super excited because we are in two extreme places right now with my guest. But before saying anything, why don't we invite her over so she can tell us about who she is? Come on in, Debbie. Hi
Hey,
there.
everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you so much for mostly being patient with me all this time. And I'm so excited again to have you. I feel like you are going to give us so many amazing good tips. Why don't we start telling people who you are?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Debbie Levitt. My company's called Delta CX. If you're curious about me, you can just Google Delta CX or go to the Delta CX YouTube channel. And I've been working in CX and UX in one form or another for hundreds of years. And my background is strategy and research and design. I started out a little bit more of a designer and have ended up a little bit more of a researcher. And now I've been moving more into leadership. And so I've been hiring people. And obviously, I look at a lot of portfolios. And I know one of the things we wanted to talk today is about portfolios.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I think maybe I can tell a little bit about UX and time. What is being UX and time is for me a space where I can tell people what it is to be new in the field, and always invite people that can tell us a little more about what it is to be in. Because being new is always so hard, but having people with experience and they're willing to mostly share and empower others with what they know, that's what I love about UX and time. Perfect. I feel like we are missing tell people where we are because I know that people is in the other link. Let me show them where we are before we continue, because let's tell them, hey everybody, follow us here to this link. Yes, again, I've been having issues in how to connect my two different places. I hope that you can follow us to this link. I just put it in the previous invite. So I hope that people, you can make it here. Okay.
I don't see it in LinkedIn. Can you add it to the LinkedIn chat?
Yeah. Oh, let's put in the link in chat here. I put it in the comments in the other side.
I don't see the comments. I'm on LinkedIn. It doesn't show me comments, and I don't know why.
Okay, let's see here too. Because I can see it. Didn't. Oh, I have it here. I don't know. I just did it. I saw some people on the other side. Okay. I don't know how I can tell people if there are people there. I don't see anyone there though.
Yeah, I don't think LinkedIn Live got it. Let's see.
Yeah. Trying to invite them. I can see as we are live. I can see as that we are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to be connected to the LinkedIn event, but oh well, we should probably talk about other things.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. I should definitely practice this more, mixing between my Melon and my LinkedIn. But something
I think I would dump Melon, but I'm a little bit biased.
yes. Something that I'm really interested in is, why do people, or what do you call yourself, Mary Poppins of customer experience and user experience? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's an easy one. The nickname was actually given to me by my own clients because I typically go in as a consultant or contractor, and typically I would go in as I like to say, I fly in, I fix everything I can, I sing a few songs, and I fly away to where I'm needed next. And I just found that people noticed that, that I kind of came in as a consultant and ended up having to leave at some point. And I am a musician and I am a singer. And so when I started having my last days at places, people would say, "Bye, Mary Poppins." And it just happened independently. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat. That kind of works. Maybe I'll run with that a little bit. So that's where the nickname comes from.
Yeah, I love it. And I think and it's easy when they do it for you. Like, it's not that you ask for it. So I love it. Now, I want to go more into what we came for. That is to talk about the portfolio. How relevant and how important is a portfolio for designers nowadays?
Yeah, I think that unless you're in leadership where you're going to be more of a manager or director or strategist, people still want to see portfolios because to me, they are, even though I don't love working on my portfolio, I do like to look at other people's portfolios. And ultimately, your CV or resume tells me where you've worked, but it doesn't tell me if you did a good job there. It doesn't tell me if you know what you're doing. It doesn't tell me what you know, what you can do, what you've done, and things like that. And so the portfolio through storytelling allows me to get a little bit of insight into what you can do or know how to do, how you've been doing it or how you prefer to do it. And to me, it's really just speed dating. It's really just, okay, do I want to talk to this person? It's the portfolio isn't going to get you the job. You still have to get yourself the job through the interviewing process. But to me, the portfolio is very important for getting you the interview. Now, some hiring managers say, I don't care about portfolios. I don't look at them. I just look at the resume. And I say, you can, but sometimes the resume doesn't really tell the story. The resume doesn't tell the story of why somebody left a job quickly or had a gap on their resume or worked at a company that you might find unethical or, like, to me, the portfolio tells aspects of the story that can help me decide whether or not I want to interview you. So that would be why it's important. And, it's still a thing. It hasn't gone out of style.
Makes sense. And I love the speed dating because I feel like even though you cannot tell much about someone when you're at this speed dating, you can still know if you want to continue with maybe instead of 5 minutes, like a 10-minute chat. So how do
you don't have to marry the person?
No.
Do we want to interview this person?
Totally. How do I make my date longer? How do I make this portfolio stand up for you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's the advice seems very obvious, but yet people aren't doing it. So I keep saying the obvious, which is your portfolio has to show me that you are qualified for whatever this job is. If this is a junior researcher job, I need to see research being done at a junior level. If this is a senior designer job, I need to see design being done at a senior level. People keep asking me, how can I stand out? Or what do you think of my personal brand? And I say, I don't care about your personal brand. I'm not hiring you as a conference speaker or a book author. I'm trying to see if you actually know how to do your job or how to do the job we expect you to do at the company that's interviewing you. So bizarrely, it seems so simple, but the best way to stand out is to actually know what you're doing. Because I estimate that about 96% of the portfolios that I look at are people who are not yet ready for their first UX job. Now, that's usually a surprise to them. They thought they were ready for their first UX job. They figured they watched that video, they read that book, they took that course, they went to that school, and now they're ready for a job. And then I go through their portfolio and I say, here's the things I'm seeing that look good, and here's the things I'm seeing that make me not want to interview you. Again, pretending that I'm the hiring manager who's thinking of interviewing you. And I think people are sometimes very surprised that whatever book they read or course they took or whatever is really not enough. Even when somebody may have promised them, like, take this course or go to this school and then you're going to get that job, and they don't get the job and they start to think it's them, like, oh my gosh, I'll never work in UX, I'm bad at this. And I just tell people, look, you can't decide that now. If you're trying to get your first UX job, we don't know. We don't know how good you'll someday be at UX work. We only know that right now you haven't learned enough for a hiring manager to say, yes, this is that person that we've been looking for. So weirdly, the best way to stand out is to be the person who knows what they're doing and does it well.
Okay. So I feel like then I totally understand what you were saying about taking the course, or they're pretty good at selling what is going to happen next. But I feel like, how do we bring ourselves back to the reality of what we have in our hands and how we can move forward to find the experience? Because I feel like what happened, and I struggled that much at the beginning too, is like, how do I learn more like a real touchable experience that I can really show in my portfolio, not having a job or not working in a multidisciplinary environment? How do I do that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the ugliest thing about UX right now, because there should be junior or entry level jobs that welcome people who are still learning, and whether we call them apprentices or interns or grads or whatever, there should be some sort of level of people where they're coming in and we know they need help. We know that they need training and support and their work reviewed. But the problem is that people have decided, let's just have a junior job, and your junior job requires 1 or 2 years of experience and you know what you're doing. We don't really need to give you much training. So then what does that mean for the people who are still stuck in that limbo, in that weird middle ground between, I think I've learned some things, and where's that first job? Now, the problem is that there aren't a lot of good options. Pretty much every option out there, in my opinion, is very problematic and is flawed. So, for example, let's take, I'm going to do free work for a charity, or I'm going to do free work for a real company, or I'm going to do paid work for whatever. And what I found is that many of the projects that people find online, especially these volunteering opportunities and stuff, they're almost never UX work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's almost never a qualified person checking your work. So you end up with something that doesn't look great in your portfolio because it's not really UX work, because UX isn't, hey, we think our website needs to be better. Hey, I have an idea of how to make it better. Hey, I think I made it better. Bye. That's not UX. That I call that web design. If you are just making what a client asks for, or you're making what you like, that's not UX, because where is you? Where is the user in that? Where's the research or the testing? So number one, I find that a lot of these things people do that they think will get them experience, like these volunteer jobs or even hackathons, you're not really doing UX. And when I see it in your portfolio, I say, where's your process? Where's your user-centered design? What process did you follow? And then the number two thing is that a lot of these volunteer opportunities, or whatever they are, they rarely have a well-qualified person looking at your work at every step, not at the end and going, yeah, whatever, here's a check, you're fine. So when I coach people, like let's say it's research, they make a research plan. I look at the research plan, we talk about the research plan, we make it better. It's not like, you made a research plan, I'm sure it's good enough, keep going. We don't keep going until it's great. And we don't keep going until you've learned stuff and made it better. And the problem is there aren't a lot of those opportunities out there. I'm doing it as coaching, but people are paying me for that. I don't have a good way. I can't afford to do that for free for people. That's just too much of my time to become someone's teacher. Like, think about piano lessons. You probably couldn't go up to a professional piano teacher and say, I want to learn piano from you and I think it should be free. You know, they're probably not going to teach you piano. So for me, I do all of the free stuff through my YouTube channel, where we have over 600 hours of videos. There's a lot of stuff that I do for free, but when it comes to checking people's work, I just can't make time to check everybody's work for free. So ultimately, you need a mentor or a coach who can look at your work and help you do better, because nearly none of these things where people think, I'm going to get some practice, or I'm just going to come up with a project for myself. If you are just guessing at UX and nobody's checking your work, you run the risk that you take time doing something, you're guessing at it, and then it doesn't look that great in the portfolio, because I come and look at your portfolio and I go, I think this person is just guessing at stuff. It looks like they don't really know what they're doing.
Totally. And I feel like it's just such a complex process or complex problem. Like, where do I get this experience? Where do I find the mentors? Do I find the right mentor? I think that's the other issue too. Yes. Okay. Let's say that I found a mentor. I'm working. I'm growing. Now, how doing that process to show it on my portfolio? Because I feel like that's the other problem. Maybe I know how to do the work, but I know that the storytelling and how I show my process is really important. What will be some steps?
Yeah, so one of the biggest mistakes I see in portfolios is what I call I did a thing. And I see these things in portfolios where people go, then I interviewed users. Then I sketched screens. And I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. I am trying to figure out if you actually are good at each of these things. It's not enough for you to say, I interviewed some people. Like, hold on, there's a whole world of things that go with interviewing people. There's planning your research. There's all of your goals and strategy, the questions you're going to ask or the tasks you're going to observe. There's writing that script or protocol or guide. Then you've got recruiting the users. If you don't find the right users, then I'm looking at your portfolio going, wait a minute, you only asked like your cousins? Like, are they even the target audience? Do you understand the importance of correct recruiting? Like, we had someone drop by our Slack community, which is free to join, the Delta CX Slack, and they were like, hey, I'm doing a project on people who use food pantries, so everybody fill out this survey. And I was like, only people who use food pantries should fill out the survey. So that's recruiting, and that's really important. And I need to know a little bit more about that. Then how did you do the sessions? How did you analyze them? Usually people just show a picture of some sticky notes, but tell me more about how did you analyze this stuff? And then, of course, what did you find at the end? What were the insights or opportunities that you found? So again, what I normally see is I spoke to 5 people. Why? What were your goals? What were you trying to learn? Why 5? Where did you find them? What are the 3 coolest things or most interesting things you were going to ask them? What's the 3 to 5 things that you learned that were surprises, mind-blowing, not expected? So the problem with a lot of portfolios is people just say, and then I did this, and then I did this. Now, if you are handing that to an HR person or recruiter, someone who's not strong in UX, that's good enough for them. They just want to see some of the buzzwords. They just want to see a couple of pictures of sticky notes and someone pointing at a thing and whatever. That's good enough for HR recruiters. But what happens if you're being interviewed by a hiring manager who's a UX expert? Is that going to be enough for them? So what I suggest for people is, remember, this is UX. That means that your portfolio is my first opportunity to see how you do with UX. Because if your portfolio doesn't tell me what I need to know and I'm the user, well then, who'd you design this for? Because I'm the person who's got to consume it. So I advise people that if you've got additional information that some people want to see and some people don't, use something like an accordion. If you're new to UX and you haven't heard the word accordion, it's where we have a section that opens and closes. And that way you can say, I ran research. I spoke to 5 people. Want to know more about that research? Open the accordion. And that way you can keep your portfolio shorter for the people who don't care about those details, but then have optional additional section. Now, some people have done that and they just link me over to like a video or they link me over to some raw data and I say, just tell me your story. Don't make me go watch a video. You have to remember the average hiring manager right now, from what I'm hearing, is spending less than 2 minutes in your portfolio. That means we're not watching videos. We're probably not going through your prototype. We have to just grab the most important pieces from your storytelling and say, does it look like this person knows what they're doing? And unfortunately, when you just say, then I made a user flow, and I go, whoa, how'd you make a user flow? How'd you know what was the right order of the right screens to do stuff? What information did you use to know that you were doing the right thing? And I think that's where people sometimes also get confused, because depending upon where they've learned UX or what courses they've taken, Maybe they were taught a good user flow is the one you like. A good user flow is the one that looks good to you. And I say, wait a minute, you just did research. This research should have influenced your user flow. Why aren't these two tied together? I see a lot of mistakes in portfolios in all of these areas. I see research mistakes. I see a million user flow mistakes. I see user flows where when I start talking through them, I go, that's not the way this is going to work. I said, according to your user flow, everybody has to register. There's no login. I've literally seen a user flow with no login, only registration. And I say, I'm concerned you don't know how to make a user flow, because a user flow has to account for, are they registering or are they logging in? All of the paths that someone can take for whatever this task is has to be represented in the user flow. You can't just say, well, I'm just going to show one path. Mm-hmm. That's not what we do in our day-to-day work. We have to show all the paths.
Yes, I feel like I don't know what to ask you, but it's just so frustrating, because I feel like it goes back where, like you just mentioned, like the school that we went or the course that we took, and that is kind of your fault. And a lot of people will tell you that, that's what I learned at school and that's what I did. I feel like a lot of times the portfolio is more selling the product than selling themselves as a designers, or like the way that they think is they just jump right away to the coolest stuff as the graphics and the motion. And I love that idea of having like a short version for HR, because they wouldn't know exactly what to look at and what to read. And then we have a longer version for someone that will need a little more understanding of who you are, what did you do, and how you did it. Let's say what is happening too is that I'm finding a job or finding a job post that want me to do everything at one point. Yes, I have to be this unicorn generalist. But what about if I want to start like focusing in one area? I don't know, research. How do I make my portfolio more towards the other side?
Yeah, remember, don't rush to be a unicorn or a generalist, because I don't need someone who can do 7 things so. I need someone who is great at things. And so people say, oh, yeah, I'm going to learn a little coding. I'm going to learn a little research. I'm going to learn a little design. And I'm going to say, I'm sorry, but I don't need someone who knows a little of something. These jobs require you to come in and start doing this work immediately, usually with no help or support. You can't just know a little. So I do recommend that people start out with some sort of specialization, usually either research, either what we typically call design, which would be information architecture and interaction design, or it might be visual design, visual and brand and things like that. I see those as 3 separate specialties, and I suggest people specialize in one first. And you say, but Debbie, all these jobs want people to do this and this and this. And I say, hold on. Let's put on our critical thinking hats, as we say over on my YouTube channel. Put on your critical thinking hat. Doesn't fit over my headphones. Put on your critical thinking hat. Do you think you're going to be happy at that job? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be happy at a job that wants you to do 2 full-time jobs, 3 full-time jobs, 4 full-time jobs? How are you going to balance your work? Mm-hmm. How are you going to know what to work on at any time? Hey, I'm trying to do some of that research we need. Yeah, but I need the visual design. Get me that branding. But I'm working on the research. Well, do the branding first. But I'm trying to do my user flows. Forget your user flows. I need this other thing. It seems like that's a job that we want. And it seems like that's a job companies are asking for right now. But I personally believe we shouldn't apply for those. We should only apply for those if we're good at all those things and we know how to juggle them. But I'm worried that especially newbies will go into these jobs, which are very common, especially at startups. They go, ooh, I'm going to work at a startup. I think that's almost the worst place for a newbie to start, because Usually startups don't get UX at all. They have no other UX person working there who can look at your work and say good or bad. They usually don't have a good strategy or plan. They're changing their minds every few days, and you just have to keep drawing the latest thing. Draw this idea, draw this idea, draw this idea. Well, now we have this idea. And you don't really get to follow through on the promise of user-centered design, research, good content strategy, information architecture and interaction design, testing it to make sure it's not a pile of dog poop, and then, of course, giving it that look. And the company that thinks you're going to do all of these things is going to burn you out fast, and is probably going to hurt your mental health, because you're going to have that, you're not necessarily going to have this, but probably you're going to have a confidence question. Why do I feel like I'm not doing my work well? Why do I feel like I can't keep up? You can't keep up because they're giving you an unreasonable amount of work. It's not you. So I tell people, you don't have to apply for that job. If someone offers you that job, you don't have to take that job. When you're interviewing, see episode 129 on the Delta CX YouTube channel. When you're interviewing, find out, are there other people in UX there? Do we do research? Do we believe in testing? Does engineering wait until UX has a design that they've tested? Or does engineering just run with stuff no matter what UX is doing? Do you want to work there? Are you sure you want to work there? So do yourself a favor. I can't tell you how many people come to me privately or on our Tuesday shows where I answer questions, and they are struggling. And they say, I can't keep up with all this work. They expect me to be all of these things and all of these people and write some code and maybe do some SEO. I just want to tell you right now, you probably don't want that job. You think you do, but I don't think you do. Now, I don't even remember what your question was, because your question wasn't that. But I just had to go there because, and I'm sorry I forgot your question, but I want to make sure people know you think you want this job. I think I remember your question now. But you don't want this job. Even I don't want this job, and I could probably do the job, but I don't want the job because I don't want to be burned out. I don't want to be held responsible for 3 people's full-time jobs. How are you ever going to prioritize and do that? And what's going to happen is you're going to end up having to skimp on those things and reduce what you're doing, and you're not going to be able to do your best work. And then it's going to make you feel like, am I even good at this? My work is so mediocre. Well, it's all they gave you the time for. So you have to be careful. So I think your question was, how do we have a good portfolio that's showing only research or only design? I think that was the question.
Correct. But wait, hold on before you go there, because I love that that you're staying honest and saying like, yes, you shouldn't be taking the job. And at the same time, we finish school and we're finding the job, and this is the job that they are offering us. But I feel like if we start telling people there are options where you can have a place where you can grow, when you can get mentor, when you're going to be challenged to be better, for us is to keep at one point where our values line and how our values line with the company at the end of the day. Because I feel like for me, I know a lot of like career switchers that went or are in this now because they want to do something greater, but doesn't make sense to go in a company that is going to treat us as we were treated before in our previous career just because we want a job. So I think, thank you so much for really keep it honest and telling people that they can find a job where they can grow.
Let me add to that too, because again, if you think you want the job at the cool startup who's going to have you do all the things, what's going to end up in your portfolio? Let's imagine our future self. Will your portfolio show wonderful, thorough UX work where you got the time to research? The startup sat around and waited for you to do research. Said no startup ever. Almost every startup is speed over quality. Are you going to be able to do that research? Is your portfolio going to show really great research? And is your portfolio going to show good attention to design? Or did you just make the screens for what somebody else said they wanted to do? And so the problem is that we think, oh my God, it's my first job, I have to say yes. And I say, be careful. You could end up working in a place that not only burns you out and makes you feel like garbage and like you're bad at this, and you're not growing and learning, but then what's going to go in your portfolio? It's so rare that newbie UX people at startups are doing great UX work. So often you're doing, I just sketched what that guy described. And then I look at your portfolio and I go, can this person solve problems? Because to me, UX is a problem finding and problem solving job. If you go into a startup who doesn't care about problem finding and problem solving because they have a great idea they want to build, what are you showing me in your portfolio? And so I think we have to be careful and put on the critical thinking hat and imagine your future self. Imagine your future self working at a job where nobody knows what UX is or does. Nobody else there works in UX, and they just want you to hurry up and make screens. Will you be happy doing that? And will your portfolio help you get the next job? Or will I look at it and say, I'm not sure this person can solve problems. They just draw screens that are someone else's idea.
And I love that's what you were saying, like because at the end of the day, we want our next job to be better and in a space that we enjoy and a product that we love or whatever it is. But it's so important what we choose today for us to get that next step. And like you were saying, exactly, like before even like putting hackathons or putting projects that don't represent us what we want in the future. And that is going to be the same at work. If there's nothing that we can show, are we going to be proud to show it, or are we going to find the next job in the same kind of job, just in a different company?
Look, and this is not just for newbies. I worked at a company for 2 years and I had nothing to put in my portfolio because every time I tried to design something, they didn't want to research, they didn't want to test it. The engineer wanted to design it. The product manager had a better idea. I would design something, they would say, no, that's ridiculous. We don't want to do that. We like this other thing. I worked at this place 2 years. They're an incredibly famous American company. Even people outside of America have sometimes heard of them. And I have nothing to show in my portfolio after 2 years of work. And people forget that that can really hurt your career, because then I go to the next job and they want to see my recent work. I don't have good recent work to show you. Hey, you just worked at a famous company. Is there anything you can show us? Is there anything you can tell us? Well, some of it's confidential, but the stuff that went live, I'm embarrassed by. The stuff that went live, they told me to copy the competitor. And when I tried to design something that didn't copy the competitor, they said, no, copy the competitor. That's what we want. Don't try to make something new or better. We want what they're doing. So you have to be careful, because a lot of times people go into these jobs and they're afraid to leave them when they realize the mess that it is. And I tell people, I don't care if you've been there a month. I don't care if you've been there 3 months. If it is starting to look ugly, start applying.
Yeah.
It's going to take months to find the next job. It's not like you're quitting next week. But start applying and get yourself out of there. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to ask yourself, why am I not learning and growing? And then you're going to look at your portfolio and say, what am I putting there? So I really want people to be pickier. To me, newbies need to go into larger companies. There are some that are welcoming juniors and apprentices with very little experience. Not a lot yet, but I'm seeing more and more, so fingers crossed. But also, if UX isn't for you, pick something else. I mean, no offense to anybody watching. UX is not going to be for everybody. I didn't go into the career that I always thought I would go into. By the time I was getting more serious about it, I realized it wasn't for me. And some people think UX is fun and sticky notes and workshops and yelling and whatever. And when I tell them, I fight with people every day. People disagree with me every day. People belittle me. Maybe not now that I'm in leadership, but back when before I was in leadership and I was doing the day-to-day work, people avoid me. They don't invite me to meetings. They want to do my work. Like, I can barely think of a job with more conflict and disagreement that's still in technology. And, double check some of the promises or glossy YouTubers that you're watching, these young, pretty girls in the San Francisco area who all magically have amazing high paying jobs and endless free coffee. That's not the story for most jobs. And you can get free coffee, but did you sell your soul to get it? That's not worth the trade. I'll buy my coffee and I'll keep my ethics. So, be careful of some of these glossy stories that you're being shown, because they don't all match reality. And when I watch, when some people send me some of these YouTube videos, and it's like a day in the life at my work. And I'm like, as far as I can tell, she ate all day and drank coffee all day. I think she ate 6 salads today, played a video game, and drank a coffee. Where's the work? So be careful of some of these things. I don't think they're showing you what a UX job can be like, and it's not going to be for everybody.
And I love that. Yeah, it's not for everybody. So, and it's okay. I feel like, to be honest with yourself, and I love having informational interviews with people, and they can really tell you what it is day to day. I think that helps me a lot when I was transitioning. But okay, before we keep going in something else, what about, yes, if I wanna now specialize my portfolio for something more specific, how do I change, or how do I make it more specific into something with the same work that I have already?
Yeah, so if you've been doing, so first of all, again, it's great to be a specialist. If you have research, if you're focusing on research, then your portfolio might only show research work. That's fine. I don't expect you to design. I don't expect you to have screens. I don't expect you to have pretty colors. That's totally fine. You're the researcher. If you're the designer, I don't expect you to do the research. Now, I'd like to see you work from research. I'm hoping that your work will show that somebody did the research and you're working from good knowledge of the customer, and not just, I have an idea, or I made a guess, or we all got together and made group guesses. So I'm looking for something that looks like whatever it is, you know what you're doing. And so the researchers can have a portfolio with only research samples, but again, I'm looking for process. How do you do this? Now, what's the right answer to that? The right answer is whatever your process is, you've got to be able to speak to it and explain it. Here's an example of the wrong answer. I once in an interview asked a guy, what is your UX process? And his answer was, and this is a long time ago, I open Adobe Illustrator. And I was like, well, that's your tool or software, but like, what is your process? And he's like, nope, that's my process. I open Adobe Illustrator. Now, the 2022 version of that is I open Figma. And that's still not a process. That's a tool. And if Figma fell in the ocean tomorrow, you'd use a different tool. What is your process? How do you go about doing these things? Now, some people say, oh, I'm using Double Diamond. I use user-centered design. I'm using design thinking. I'm using whatever. And I say, look, as long as you can explain it and show how you did those things, that's what's important. Because, and where I think some people make mistakes is they don't show how their work ties back to their process. So let's use design thinking as an example. Design thinking is technically not a UX process, and I hate design thinking, but let's pretend that's what you've learned and that's what you're going to do. So you might say, well, step one, I empathize with people. And I say, well, first of all, you probably didn't, because empathy is actually vicariously feeling someone else's feelings. So you probably didn't do that. But whatever your definition of empathy is, tie that to the work you did. You can't just say, and these are mistakes I've seen, I care about customers. I'm thinking about customers. Well, that's not research. That's not good knowledge of customers. That's guessing about people. That could even be racist. That could be stereotyping about people. I've heard so many people say, well, I'm thinking about customers and they're poor, so they probably do this and this and this and this. And I go, whoa, oh, that's not empathy at all. That sounds like a pile of poop, if you ask me. So if you're going to tell me that you do research first, or you empathize first, or whatever it is. Even if I don't believe in whatever process you use, because I hate design thinking. But when I see it in a portfolio, I'll play along. Okay, you use design thinking? Show me. And you have to be able to explain what you did for each of those steps. Define the problem, second step of design thinking. How did you define the problem? Too often I see people say, well, I did some Googling and it looks like people don't like this. Whoa, hold on. If you came and worked at my company, we don't do research by Googling stuff. That's is that sometimes part of research? Sure, that's sometimes part of secondary or desk research, but that's not the core of what we do. A survey is not the core of what we do. The qualitative research is the core of what we do. So if you're going to tell me you empathize, you still have to show me the steps you went through to get to that point. If you're going to tell me you defined the problem, I need to see the steps you went through to get to the problem. Otherwise, very often people are making up problems. I can tell. You cannot fool me, everybody. And you can fool other people, but do you want to work for the people you could fool? That doesn't sound good. Who else is working there? Other people who fooled them? This sounds terrible. So you can't fool me, and you can't fool other experts. Usually people who have, I would say, at least 4 or 5 years of real UX, not fake UX, 4 or 5 years of real UX work can tell somebody who's not quite doing it from someone who is. So remember to focus your portfolio on helping me understand how you did stuff. Why did you do stuff? Give you another example. Almost every portfolio I see shows me an empathy map. I don't believe in empathy maps, but that's fine. Forget about me for a second. This is not about me. Why'd you make an empathy map? What would have happened to the project if you didn't have an empathy map? How did you use the empathy map later to sketch those screens? I bet you didn't look back at it. So if you're going to make stuff because your school said make stuff, I'm not impressed. I want to make sure that if you're making stuff, you know why you're making that stuff. And you know why you're making this kind of stuff instead of that kind of stuff. Because you can make different stuff. And we don't always need all the stuff. So, we don't follow a certain path. A lot of people take like the Google UX Coursera course, which I also don't like, and they say, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to run a survey. I need to talk to 5 people. I need to do this. And I go, user-centered design is completely fluid and flexible and is designed for someone who is strategic to look at the project and say, what outcome are we trying to create right now? Okay, here's a world of things that I can do. Which things does this project need? Which methodologies am I going to use? There's like a purple book that's called like User Experience Methods or something like that. It's got 140 things in it? I can't even remember. It's not like we do 4 things over and over, like talk to people, make an empathy map. There's a zillion things that we can do. And the idea is that I don't expect this from a newbie. I don't expect a newbie to be strategic and to know what's the right thing for us to do. But a senior or higher should be familiar with a lot more methods and know when do we need something and when do we not need it. And so if you're going to put an empathy map in your portfolio or your project, and if I'm interviewing you, I'm going to say, why'd you make that? And how did it influence your design later? How did it influence the strategy of the product? What did you learn there? And a lot of people are stuck when I ask them that question. Why'd you make an empathy map? And very often I get like, my school said to, and I go, not good enough. That's not good enough. This is about critical thinking. UX is super, super critical thinking, logic, deductive reasoning, being a detective. And if I say, why did you do something? You have to have a good reason for it. Why didn't you do something? You need a good reason for that. So these are the types of things, because you've got the portfolio, but remember, if your portfolio is pretty good, I'm going to meet you in an interview. Now you have to be ready to take these questions. You have to be able to speak to your process. When we're interviewing you, we want to know your process, your thinking, your approach, your reasons, why you did things, why you didn't do a thing. I'll give you an example. I had an interview go badly last year when I asked a guy who was interviewing as a researcher. I said, what's your research process? Now, I'll technically accept any answer that is explained well and is a good research process. Doesn't have to be my favorite one, could be any of them. And he said, research is so important. You really need to make sure you're doing research. And I said, okay, I agree. What's your process? And he was like, oh my God, research is so amazing. You can get so much good information from it. It's so important. Now, he might have been nervous. That's okay. He might not have had a good answer. He might have been unprepared for that question. But remember that your portfolio is showing me that process. And the story you're telling me is of the process that you went through. And the best process takes things you did earlier and uses them again later. So the best process takes stuff somebody did in research, whether it's you or a researcher, and uses it for user flows, uses stuff we learned in research for interaction design. It's all about making sure that we're making, as I like to say, meaningful, actionable, and helpful stuff so that we're moving information and good decisions through our process. That's why when people say, I talked to 5 people, I'm thinking, I have no idea if you did that well or not. And another one, maybe not the worst, but up there, are group projects, because at very few companies will you be working on something with other people who work in UX. We don't have enough people. We can't put 3 people on a project. We have to put 1 person on 3 projects. So when I get a portfolio and it's you and 4 other people did this thing, and your storytelling's not clear about which things you did and which things they did, it's very hard for me to choose to interview you. I can't tell what you did. I can't tell what you can do. That's where this falls apart.
Okay, so I want to tie it in a little bit of what you were saying at the beginning, because I feel like this could be something that it will improve the way that we work as a designers and when we are building that portfolio. And you were talking about the difference between design thinking and user-centered design. And I will say that most on every school and every online course that we all took, we use design thinking framework. And that's what we learn, and we base everything on it. So how we go outside of that and start going really into user-centered design methodology?
Yeah, I mean, again, depending upon how much you want to invest in that, there's a lot out there about user-centered design. User-centered design has been around since the 80s. It's not new. Design thinking is the new thing, because design thinking is what we call a derivative of user-centered design. User-centered design is the thing. Design thinking is a subversion trying to make user-centered design shorter or easier. And even Double Diamond is user-centered design with a couple of things changed a little bit. So kind of user-centered design is like the godfather or godmother of all of this stuff. And then these other ones are like, well, here's a shorter version we could do. And so obviously it's really easy to teach the short version, because the short version usually doesn't have a lot of attention to quality and details. So for example, that's why I'm saying, hey, you empathized. How? Mm-hmm. And I bet there's people watching right now who are saying, I've never had to think about that. I've never even had to. Yeah.
I just said empathize. Yes.
Yeah. I just said, I'm empathizing. I care about customers. I thought about customers. And whenever we say empathy on my YouTube channel, I go, I empathized. And I say, okay, but how? What was the information that you used? Here's another graphic that we roll out. That's great if you have empathy, but based on what knowledge? And then what action did you take? Because if you didn't take the right action for the user, I don't care if you have empathy. Doesn't matter. Congratulations for your empathy. I'll get you a card. Congratulations on your empathy. What knowledge is it based on? And we really have to ask ourselves these questions when we consider Black people, people of color, LGBTQIA+, people of different religions and ethnicities. No way do I want to be anywhere where I'm going to say, hey, here's a predominantly Black community. I really empathize with them. I hope someone will punch me in the face if I say that, because that's ego. That's not empathy, that's ego. You cannot truly empathize with someone else's lived experience. And so empathy is starting to be controversial in UX, because we can't look at a community that we're not from and say, I empathize with them. No, you don't see their world through their eyes. You've gained some knowledge of them. That's great. You've learned some things about them, and hopefully you care. And it's got to lead you to the right action. If you're not taking the right action, I don't care about your empathy and your bright stars and your woo-woo. Do you have good knowledge of these people? Do you have anybody on your team who's from that community? And what action are you taking? So I just want to say, be careful of this. So again, design thinking is a super stripped down, watered down, micro version of user-centered design. That's why sometimes when I put up the user-centered design graphic, people go, yeah, that looks like design thinking. First I'm going to empathize by talking to some people. Then I'm going to sketch some screens. Then I'm going to test it. Well, this looks just like design thinking. And I go, well, that's because design thinking was based on this. If you're a curious cat, please Google for my Medium article called, Was Design Thinking Designed to Not Work? It's an important question for us to ask, and it requires some critical thinking. So whether you're doing user-centered design, double diamond, design thinking, or anything else, I ask people, explain this to me. You can't just throw buzzwords at me and say, I framed the problem. How? How do you know you framed the right problem? It's very easy to see the wrong problem. So ultimately, design thinking is, again, a micro derivative, tiny slice of what user-centered design is or could be. And the reason that it exists is because it's easy to sell. It sells the idea that if you can learn this easy thing that you can do in just hours or days, you're Debbie, you're Don Norman, you're Larry Marine, you're Darren Hood, you're Nick Fine, you're the people that you admire the most out there, you're Susan Weinschenk. And so I think we have to be careful, because to me, design thinking doesn't sell user-centered design as much as it sells the fantasy of greatness. And to me, you don't get that greatness until you do greatness. Like you don't get greatness just because you're doing design thinking and you check off the boxes. Oh, look, I empathize. Check. Oh, look, I framed a problem. Check. Oh, look, I made a sketch. Check. It could all be bad. It could all be garbage. It could all be badly done. It could all be flawed. But meanwhile, someone's checking it all off and going, yep, you're doing design thinking. Meanwhile, us in the user-centered design world are going, hold on. Was the user even involved here? It looks like y'all got together and did a workshop guessing about your guesses. Mm-hmm. You made a solution based on guesses. You piled guesses on top of guesses, and then you said, that's my solution. And I said, whoa, user-centered design is supposed to keep us from doing that. Whereas design thinking says do that, user-centered design says quality first. Make sure you've researched with people and have that knowledge before you try to go to the next step and understand the real root cause of the problem rather than the surface level problem or what we think is going on. If anybody starts watching or reading a lot of Don Norman, you'll hear him say, almost every time someone gives you a problem to solve, it's the wrong problem. The first thing you should do is find the right problem. But design thinking is hit and miss there. Some people believe in that and they'll show up to design thinking stuff and they'll say, we have to make sure this is the right problem first. Other people show up to design thinking stuff and go, okay, here's the problem we have, let's solve it. Mm-hmm. And so that's some of what makes these two approaches very different. There's enough on the surface where they seem similar. Like, wait a minute, we're prototyping, right? But we're prototyping in a different way. We're testing, right? But we're testing in a different way. Testing using this method. Again, goals, planning, research, strategy, writing a guide, giving people tasks to do in a very fleshed out, realistic prototype where I recommend Acture, not the other ones. Recruiting the right people, doing it, analyzing it. That's very different than what we sometimes see in design thinking, which is, hey, just draw some screens on paper, go to the coffee shop and show people. But the problem is, paper isn't screens. This is an incredibly unrealistic prototype, which makes it flawed testing. I can't say, I'm going to give you this glass of water and I want to know what you think of new Coca-Cola. This is a glass of water. And so some of design thinking stuff ends up similar to that. But again, if you are a critical thinker, if you are logical, if you're good with deductive reasoning, if you're good at asking questions, challenging things, you've already started wondering, what's up with design thinking? And why don't these two things match up? So I think that design thinking can be something that you can learn, but it's ultimately not something that a lot of us do. Like, I didn't stop doing user-centered design to do design thinking. I didn't need design thinking. I'm doing user-centered design. So I would tell people to research user-centered design. I would tell them to study cognitive psychology and human behavior, because that's really at the core of all of this. Art is not at the core of UX work, especially research work where you're not drawing stuff. So it's really human behavior is at the core of all of this. And if you want to learn more, I would be learning in that direction and bringing that into your work, even your sample fake work, and showing your portfolio. I learned this about human behavior. That's why I designed it this way, because people might do this. So that, I think that's going to be powerful.
So is this the biggest tip that we can give people to have a winning portfolio?
The biggest tip for the winning portfolio, I think, was the earlier tip, which would be accordions, and write your portfolio for the audience. The short version for HR is cool, but what happens when I see your portfolio and I go, are they good at research or are they bad at research? I don't know, because they only told me they did some research. Unknown. So remember, your portfolio has multiple audiences, and you can use accordions to open and close and add more information so that the people who want the short version get the short version, and the hopefully UX experts that you are going to work for. Note, if you're not going to work in a UX team for UX experts, that's a bit of a red flag. Be careful there. So yeah, that's what I would say is you can have a short version and a long version on the same page thanks to good interaction design. And if you're learning interaction design, you would know about accordions.
Perfect. And to finish up, I would like for people to know more about CX, because it's such a big thing that you do, and that's your work. So why don't you tell people what is CX?
Yeah, sure. So quickly, CX is a little bit confusing because there are multiple definitions of it going on at the same time. So even that's a little bit of a battleground. Some people think it's your marketing department because they survey people about how happy they are. Some people think it's customer support because they take care of people when they're not happy. But ultimately, to me, customer experience and user experience are the same thing. When we do them well, let's roll this one out. When we do them well with science and technique and strategy, they are really the same thing. Customers might be users, users might be customers. Don't get thrown off by the words. I'm not going to die on that hill. I don't want to fight over who's a customer and who's a user. They're all people, and to me, they're all in one way or another some sort of customer. They're doing business with us, or they might do business with us. So to me, the customer experience is going beyond digital to everything the customer experiences, and that's going to be everything. So that's going to be every single touch point that it could possibly include, from the moment they might need a company or product like yours or service like yours, to searching or comparing or figuring out who they're going to work with, to using you or choosing a competitor, and then what happens after. These are all the things that have to do with the customer experience, and it's a lot more than just designing screens.
And just to finish, why don't you let people know? I know that you mentioned it at the beginning, but where they can find you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks. Basically, Delta CX is my world. If you'd like to learn more about our YouTube show, go to deltacx.com/links. That's got all kinds of links related to our show, like calendar of events, how do you watch the show, how do you send in stuff, and it's all live streams. So basically, if you're following me here on LinkedIn, then hopefully you'll get a notification that I'm live, but you can also subscribe to the Delta CX channel on YouTube. Everything is organic there. We have no sponsors, so you're never going to get a plug from me. We have no affiliate links, and I donate all the ad money to charity. So I want to make sure that when you come and join us on the YouTube channel, you are not for sale, you are not for rent. I am there to try to help as many people as possible for free. And that's what the Delta CX YouTube channel is about. I would say about half the audience are UX newbies and future UXers, and about half the audience work in UX now or are leaders. So it's a really good mix of people, and we're all there to support each other.
Well, and you said at the beginning you have a Slack channel too, but I will put all the links in here. So
yeah, the link to the Slack channel is there too. So if everybody just goes to deltacx.com/links, there's a link to join the Slack channel as well. We've got basically 2 rules: be respectful and don't spam people. Other than that, we absolutely welcome everybody, and it is completely free. Again, I am not here to monetize you. I am not here to make you join a secret paid club. That is not my thing. I know some other people in UX do that. They've got their paid communities. I just want to reach as many people as possible and help them.
I feel like we could have gone for hours. I bite my tongue for questions, but thank you so much for sharing so much about what you know. Thanks. And again, empower other ones with your knowledge. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Debbie.
You too. Thanks to everybody watching. Be well, and let's say to be continued.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.